Greenskins are one of the most devastating factions in Warhammer 3. With the waaaghs, overwhelming offense, and more infighting than you can shake a stick at, they can easily drown the world in a tide of green. But who will be riding that wave of green as the biggest, baddest Greenskin lord in the game? Let's rank them all and find out. But if you want to find out how to get these videos ad-free, the answer is becoming a member for just a single $1 a month. All the same videos, just none of the ads. Check it out at the join button below. Coming in 6th place, we have Waaaghs the Slaughterer. As far as faction effects go, he's looking a little weak. Improved relations with vampire counts is okay, but it's still unlikely to result in an alliance, and especially a useful one. The lack of taking attrition in their lands is, again, okay, but if you're not going to be enemies, it's relegated to being useful to walk through their lands, which is a little bit niche. The increased capacity for troll hags and cost reductions for the Law of Death are okay, but in my opinion, the Law of Death is a mid-law at the best of times, especially when you have the Law of the Big Waaagh as an option. His faction starts at the very top of the Old World Mountains. After the initial Ogre War, he has a lot of options with the Empire and Kislev to the west, Dwarfs to the south, and Chaos Dwarfs to the east. The surplus of options does also mean a surplus of potential enemies, and in my experience that most commonly comes from both flavours of dwarves. This isn't the best matchup for Greenskins early on, so can be quite a challenge as you'll have to race to later game units to be able to keep up. On the battle side of things, his army effects are also pretty pathetic. Immunity to psychology for his army is whatever really, and increased income from sacking can be pretty good, but only comes in handy when you're not occupying. His unique waaaghs is okay with the Fear and Terror breaking most less units, but I'd still rather have more damage rather than make enemies run away for a few seconds. In combat, he's not bad, but not great either. Strong armor-piercing damage but low defense makes him a high-risk battler. The Law of Death is semi-unique, but not all that powerful, so hardly enough to carry him. Even his Skull Muncher mount doesn't change enough to make him truly great. More charge bonus and speed is okay for a spellcasting lord, but you can easily get more value out of some generic lords and heroes. His unique skills bring a lot of buffs for your mid-tier orc units alongside some caster buffs and a little bit for himself. It's not bad, but the units will leave you before you reach the endgame, making it feel a little bit underwhelming. The spellcasting buffs and stats for himself are decent, but not enough to carry him. As for why he got last place, Waaaghs' entire faction is based around him being close pals with vampire counts, but unfortunately it doesn't commit hard enough to the bit to be useful. The likelihood of actually forming an alliance is small, and the likelihood of it being useful is even smaller. All this leaves him with is access to the Law of Death, which may be fairly unique for a Greenskin lord, but not all that unique in the faction, alongside being a fairly mid-law to begin with. He doesn't bring a lot of value to his army with his effects, skills, or even his own combat prowess. Honestly, the most frustrating part is that he actually has a lot of faction effects and a unique focus. However, everything is just so half-hearted that it makes him feel like none of it really matters. Coming in 5th place, we have waaaghs the Great Green Prophet. His Savage Orc gimmick has only gotten worse over time, leading him to fall from one of the best Greenskins to one of the worst. Yeah, he can build Savage Orc buildings anywhere, so recruit them all over the map. But they're still worse versions of regular units since they rely on physical resistance, and basically everyone has magical damage from turn 1 these days. The added movement range for armies is nice, and extra Winds of Magic Reserve is great for spellcasters, but everything is dragged down by just how bad Savage Orcs really are. His starting location way down towards the southern tip of the Old World is interesting to say the least. No longer is he able to chain confederate other Greenskin factions by beating them in battle. He'll now have to fight through miles of lizards, vampire counts, tombskins, and more to even see something green outside of his starting war. It's a mixed bag as far as matchups for Greenskins goes, but be ready to take on all of them as no one nearby has a chance of liking you. In battle, the Savage Orc focus continues in his army, and it is just as pathetic. Reduced recruitment costs for units that are bad just means you're wasting half the money. Improved charge bonus can be good for the Savage Cavalry, but more physical resistance may as well not exist since, as I said, everyone has magical damage. And of course his waaaghs only adds more, making it one of the worst. In battle, he's pretty much a pure spellcaster. He lacks any real damage or melee stats, so won't be racking up kills in melee. His defense is also pretty dog, so it's not even like he can be a tanky bulwark. All of his value comes from the Law of the Big Waaagh, which is a pretty top-notch law, but nothing you can't get through some generic means. He also has a few strong abilities, but even with his mount, he's relegated to being a backline spellcaster, so while strong, could be better. His unique skill line is actually pretty good, with a decent stat buff for his Savage Orcs, his army, and spellcasting. You even have some buffs for non-savage units, giving you the option of variety, which is never a bad thing. I think Waaaghs is one of the best examples of positioning being everything. Back in the day, he started in Ekrund and was positively surrounded by Greenskins. This let him confederate a huge number of other tribes in a matter of turns, and own most of the Badlands by the time most factions finish their starting settlement. His new location is far more isolating, and as such his faction is massively weaker. Add on the fact his entire gimmick is completely countered by magical damage, which everyone has pretty early these days, and he has been thoroughly left in the dust. The times, they are a-changing, and unless Warzag changes too, he'll continue to get worse. Coming in 4th place we have Gorbad Ironclaw. Gorbad's mechanic is so Gorbad because it feels like it could have been a whole lot gore better. The plans are temporary army buffs that can be strong but require you to jump through an inordinate amount of hoops to make use of the good ones. Disagree all you want, but I find this mechanic both boring to use and not all that strong, especially early in the game. The added rewards from waaaghs are okay, but you gotta win a waaaagh first, so all it really does is make it easy to snowball when you're already doing well. Extra income from raising is cool and all, but sacking is almost always more profitable, so a bit of a waste of time. And reduced global recruitment is that's actually pretty good, can't complain about that. His starting location in Black Crag could be worse. The initial wars allow you to take quite a big chunk of land via tribal confederation, but it also opens you up to attack from a lot of directions. Thorgrim is to the north, with more dwarves to the east, rats to the south, and potentially Empire to the north-north. You have lots of options of where to go, just be wary of leaving too many ways into your territory. As for his army effects, he has no army effects. Alright, technically, he has a 10% upkeep reduction for all units, which is fine, but maybe like 600, maybe 700 gold in an endgame army if it's really expensive. Of course, he still has that plus 100% to his leadership aura size, and if anyone can show me leadership aura making literally any difference to a battle, then maybe I'll care. Even his waaaghs is just the standard one but lasts a bit longer. I mean, it's good, but it's pretty damn dull. Gorbad is about as standard as a combat lord as you will find. On foot, he's a strong frontlines battler with high melee stats, great armor, and even armor piercing damage. He can tank and deal damage in equal parts, adding up to a straightforward but strong battler. Add on a few buffs for himself and allies from his abilities, and he only gets better. On his Nala mount, he only gains speed and charge bonus without losing anything, so can also charge alongside maintaining his melee prowess in a similarly small package. His unique skill line brings buffs for all kinds of units, so stays relevant all game long. However, outside of this, he gets some small buffs for Y units, which are pretty niche, and some other minor buffs to XP and research, which honestly don't do a whole lot. I think the main thing that brings Gorbad down for me is consistency. His mechanic can be very strong, but it requires so much micromanagement that it's very difficult to use consistently well. Especially early on, you only receive army buffs for a couple of turns, meaning you're likely to receive benefits for a battle, maybe two. Add on the fact that you only receive currency to use them from battling with Gorbad, and it becomes pretty limiting towards the late game. Outside of this, he's a bit of a centrist in battle, which technically gives you the freedom to play how you want, but in reality it just means everything performs at the same level of mediocrity. I don't think Gorbad is terrible, but he is terribly boring, and makes for a campaign that feels very standard to play. Not bad, but certainly not great. In 3rd place, we have Skarsnik. His faction effects are a little bit all over the place, but remain somewhat powerful in a bit of a hidden way. He's part of the Race to Carrick 8 peaks, but unlike the others, he starts basically right next door, so can take it in no time, provided he can get past Thorgrim. This means he has no penalties within a few turns, and gets a bunch of faction bonuses. Outside of this, bonus XP for characters is gas, reduced hero action cost is decent, ambush success chance is okay for everyone but goated for himself, and reduced upkeep for goblins and squigs is kinda gimmicky, but lets him have insanely cheap armies, so I'm calling it a win. As I mentioned, his starting location is a short hop, skip and a jump away from 8 peaks. He's just north of Thorgrim, who is obviously a pretty large threat on your doorstep. You also have Ungrim to the north, but as long as you have the Great Equalizer, it's not much of a problem. Over to the east you have to worry about Chaos Dwarves and Skaven, but if you press south, it's mostly Greenskins that you can confederate by hunting down their leaders. If you do this, you'll gain a ton of territory in a matter of moments. Over on the battle side of things, and honestly, the main thing keeping Skarsnik this high on the list is the very first thing in his army effects. His army can use Stalking Stance, aka the ambush you can use on the move, aka Walking Death Overpowered 5000 stance. It is beyond broken, and even though it's just him that can use it, it makes battling the dwarves in the early game an insane amount easier. Aside from that, the bonuses for night goblins are kinda whatever, and hardly gonna blow your cap off. His waaaghs extends the damage bonus to ranged units, which works great with his goblin focus, so a total dub. In battles, Skarsnik is a sneaky powerhouse. He's not going to carry you from the front lines, but his high damage and decent melee stats make him surprisingly devastating if he can pick on key targets. His bonus versus large and poison make him great versus mounted characters or other large targets. Just make sure he doesn't get surrounded, as he lacks the master breakout. His abilities further accentuate this playstyle with damage and sneaky buffs to himself and allies, alongside plummeting enemy defense. His unique skill line is probably his weakest attribute. There's a bunch of abilities to buff allies and debuff enemies, but nothing is too crazy. The best part is at the end, where you increase unit stats during ambushes. Still, if you just rush down the blue tree to max out ambush success chance, it'll hardly matter. Back in the day, Skarsnik would have been dead last, but these days, likely due to him being a favourite of CA Sean, as we discovered on the podcast, he's in a really good place. His new starting location gives him a great position to steez Carrack 8 peaks in no time, alongside having other Greenskins in close proximity for some confederating. Add on his stalking stance and he's a real force to be reckoned with, even with just goblins. Now the goblins are what's holding him back from being higher, as even once you take Carrack 8 peaks, the focus on them will never surpass the highest tier of orcs. Still a great example of a faction with a gimmick they commit to, and it pays off tremendously. If you put Skarsnik in a room with any of the other lords, he likely won't be coming out. However, if you put his faction in there, they've got a strong chance of making it out alive. In second place we have Grimgor Ironhide. Grimgor has some of the simplest faction effects of all time, but sometimes simple does mean better. Extra Black Orc big bosses is pretty good, as they're very strong heroes that you can't go wrong using. The upkeep reduction for Black Orcs and Biggins is pretty significant, as Black Orcs are some of the most expensive units in the roster. However, the bonus income from post-battle loot is just crazy. It's how the Orcs make the majority of their money, and adding a massive 30% on top of that is just lunacy. It gets Grimgor to be the richest by far, and in Warhammer 3, quite like life, if you have all the wealth, you have all the power. So have you heard of this cool thing? It's called socialism. He starts his campaign all the way in the northern mountains of Morn. He's surrounded by plenty of ogres, the occasional greenskin, chaos dwarves, and various flavors of chaos. Despite this, he has a pretty strong start, being able to bowl over ogres and greenskins to easily secure 2 provinces with a handful of turns. After this, he has to be wary of chaotic threats, especially chaos dwarves, who are a challenging matchup this early in the game. The mountains are pretty straightforward to take, but just keep an eye out for anything chaotic. His army effects are equally simple and equally strong. Fear for Black Orcs is kinda whatever, but bonus movement range when winning a battle makes him into a mini Taurox or Scarbrand. 10% isn't anything crazy, but it still enables him to cover a massive amount of ground, provided he keeps battling. Lastly, his Waaagh doubles up the damage bonus in melee, which is another strong, simple change, especially considering the Black Orc focus. It's honestly a little bit disgusting just how good Grimgor is in battle for someone who looks so basic. No mounts, no spells, a handful of stat-based abilities, and raw dog melee power. Absolutely insane melee stats, fantastic armor-piercing damage, and crazy toughness. He can go toe-to-toe with anyone and anything, and probably come out on top. And in a game with actual demons of blood and violence, that's saying a lot. There's not really a lot to say, other than he rocks. He's also pretty slow, but I won't hold that against him. Grimgor's unique skills upgrade his stats alongside those of his Black Orcs. His primary focus is on making himself as powerful a battler as possible, so lean into this with the yellow skill line and you can't go wrong. I think Grimgor is one of the best examples of how sometimes simple is better. The dude himself is a basic melee fighter and one of the strongest lords in the game. His faction focuses on Black Orcs, which are also basic melee troops, and they are flat out amazing. Aside from that, the added income from post-battle loot is so simple, but makes them rich beyond measure in no time. I don't really know what else to say to justify this placement other than just play him and tell me how strong he feels. He's basically surrounded by very strong factions and he can stomp all of them without breaking much of a sweat. He's a bit like that one friend who always plays the dude with a big sword no matter what game you play. He may not have as many interesting options as the mage or the exciting dialogue options as the bard, but when it comes to hitting things very hard and getting results, he is beyond compare. In first place though, we have Grom the Paunch. The reason Grom is at the top is completely down to his cauldron mechanic. Once you get ingredients on the go, this thing lets you place all kinds of crazy effects on your faction, such as explosive missile goblin archers. It's not only a ton of fun, but it's also incredibly powerful. Aside from the cauldron, the high elf relations are inconsequential since they aren't exactly going to be buddies anyway, and reduced upkeep and increased charge bonus for pump wagons is okay, if you like pump wagons. As good as Grom is mechanically, even I can't defend his atrocious starting location. In the middle of Bretonnia, surrounded by unsuitable climates, means he can't really take any territory worth having for a good few turns. This means his only options are to flee to the Badlands with a very weak army, or sail over to Ulthuan to take on the High Elves, again with a very weak army. I get that's the point, but could you not start him on Ulthuan if that was the case? Luckily, Bretonnia kinda sucks, so it's not the hardest start, especially given their early roster. Over in battle, the increased leadership for goblins is actually pretty good, since without this they have extremely low leadership. Physical resistance is still dog, but at least it's going on top of armor, so isn't entirely worthless. And lastly, his Waaagh comes with some minor healing for the army, so a pretty strong addition. Grom is a fantastic battler in his own right, with one slight issue. You must use him as a charging chariot to get any value, and this can take some getting used to. Chariots are some of the most powerful units in the game when used right, but using them right can be a challenge. Provided you do, his high speed, mass and charge bonus make him very hard to stop once he gets on a roll. His armor-piercing anti-infantry damage can shred through infantry with ease, and you'll struggle to find anything that can slow his roll. In sustained combat, he falls apart with mid-melee stats, but that's why you gotta charge him. Add on his abilities to improve his and allies' damage output, and he's a fantastic charging lord that can lead his own chariot retinue no problem. His skill line focuses on unit buffs for goblins and wagons alongside a bunch of other goodies. Buffs for his own stats to make him deal more damage and be more tanky, extra global growth and replenishment for his army, and more post-battle loot and sacking income. Not particularly focused, but still extremely strong. As I said, Grom is heavily carried by his mechanic, and it's a testament to just how powerful it can be. The effects that you can get from a fully stocked kitchen are frankly absurd, and beyond anything that you can get from any of the other Greenskins. Even with his abysmal starting location, he still has the highest faction power potential of any of the Greenskins. His goblin buffs are less impactful than Skarsnik's, but it's nothing he can't make up for with the Cauldron. He's also a great battler, provided you use him right, and the skills are top of the line. I will say, he takes a lot more skill to be the best than Grimgor, so an argument could be made for him being the best. However, at the height of their power, I don't think it's any competition. But what I want to know is, who do you think is the best Greenskin Lord? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and if you want more Warhammer 3 rankings, then check out this video all about the top 10 underrated factions.